Hey there! Welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive, both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode 283 is titled Duet Decisions, Navigating Relocation and Career Moves with Your Partner. Hey there, Flute 360er. So I have a question for you. Are you a recent flute graduate feeling uncertain about what comes next? Do you dream of building your own flute studio but don't know where to start? Let Flute 360's Accelerator program guide you to clarity and success. Join us and become part of a community where transformation and growth happen every day. With our program, you'll gain the confidence to pursue your artistic path, build a thriving network of like-minded flutists, and receive invaluable support every step of the way. Don't miss our live session on Saturday, May 25th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. Can't make it to the live? No problem. All sessions are recorded for you to watch at your convenience, along with a library of other resources and bonus videos. Plus, our pocket coaching alone is worth the investment. So I have a special offer for you. Register for the May 25th session and gain exclusive access to a panel discussion in Finland featuring flutists Sebastian Jacot, Carol Winsence, Patrick Galois, and Dennis Borikoff. This unique opportunity is available only to our members. Click the link in the show notes to join the Flute 360 Accelerator program. Transform your flute playing and career with us. Hey there, 360er. Welcome back to a weekly episode. And today I have a special treat for you. My husband, Jay Begay, who is the audio engineer of Flute 360, is sitting down with me because this is a topic about duetting and partnership and navigating your musical journey. And because he's my partner, he's going to chime in and tell you all what we have done along the way in order to support each other through our musical journeys. So this topic is coming up because a lot of you, the Flute 360er, you are navigating your different musical terrains depending on where you are on your journey, whether it is seeking orchestral positions, graduate schools, undergraduate schools, pivoting out from a W-2 job, like a 9-to-5 job, into your own studio. And you're coming to me with this problem. And the problem is not only are you having to navigate your own path, your own journey, but you have supportive spouses and or partners who are living in the same household as you. And your decision of whether or not to go back to school, to enter school for the first time, to relocate because of a job, this decision is also based on your spouse's or your partner's decision, where they are along their career path, how they can support you, whether or not they decide to move with you, and all the in-between details. So a lot of you have been coming to me with this problem, and I'm so thankful that you are opening up. You are super vulnerable with me. And I thought, what better way to mitigate and to give you some awesome options than to have my partner in crime talk about this very topic together. So, Eric, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. So I love having you here on the show with me because as much as the 360er loves, content from me and solo, with me and my guests, I get a lot of amazing feedback when we do duet episodes together. I think the 360ers really gravitate towards your patient and very soft personality. And so thank you for being here and thank you for chiming in.
You are welcome. Glad to be here.
Nice. So there's a lot here, right? Like there's a lot to cover. And whether you are an undergraduate flutist going into school for the first time, or you're transferring schools, you're getting a different degree, or say you've already graduated and you have a career, but you're leaving that 9 to 5 and starting up your own studio, I don't care where you are on your flute journey, this topic still pertains to you. It's pertinent to you. You can pull out some of these gems from our conversation and apply it to your own flute path. Now, I am really kind of awestruck and just flabbergasted in a good way that this topic is something that actually has been brought up to me from various Flute 360ers, not just one or two different couples, but a handful of Flute 360ers and their spouses have actually dinged us through Voxer and DM with this very topic. And I never thought we would be talking about this, but here we are. So I'm excited. I think the first thing that we can start talking about, Eric, is maybe just laying out a groundwork of support and just this theme of support. Because when I look back, and what we're going to do in today's episode is we're going to give you and highlight some past seasonal transition stories that Eric and I have gone through. But the underlining theme through all of these different stories as examples is I have felt always supported by Eric. So I think just starting off with like couples supporting each other, whether it's music endeavors, business endeavors, it doesn't matter. I think support is one of the underlining themes that can be applied to anyone throughout their different various flute endeavors. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. So when we're talking about support, of course, that means a few different things. It could be emotional support and wrapping your head around that jump that you're going to do, whether that's relocating for a job or relocating for school, and it becomes daunting. So you have emotional support for that. Another thing I could think about as far as support is, of course, financial support. And that could mean a lot of things if you're a couple, married or engaged, and you have to be together. And that means moving across the country for something like that. And it requires money.
Mm-hmm.
And so what one has to do is figure out, what am I going to do when I get there? And you start wrapping things up as far as your current job and searching for things online and just figuring out how you're going to support that person and yourself financially.
Mm-hmm.
That's two forms of support there. And another one, just being there for the long haul, getting through that education.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the goal is to get educated and get a better job, right? And so that takes a lot of support in all kinds of different ways. So financial and emotional.
Yeah, and physical.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it does take muscle to move furniture. As we know,
Yeah.
we moved from Fort Worth to Lubbock and then from Lubbock back to Fort Worth.
And then abroad.
And yes, we did pack everything up into a storage unit and we moved abroad.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was a lot of decisions and a lot of, I guess we're perfect in the way that we're crazy together and crazy to make these kind of decisions together. And I guess it does. I mean, if you're with a significant other, that doesn't really make a big difference. Like, you're willing to do what they want.
Mm.
But another element, I guess, that we can say that we were blessed with was I had a remote job. And I created a remote job around this. So it was support. Well, financial support was wherever the internet took us.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the internet's all over the world. We were able to go wherever we wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So we were very fortunate to have that. And you, of course, you were going to school full time, and I was trying to build a business full time. So I don't know how fair that is to people, but just so you know, that is an option for yourself too. There is a way to do that. It just depends on, I guess, the kind of career path that you're taking. But for me, it was remote audio and video, and that kind of paved the way throughout all our journey, especially when moving abroad. It was just needing an internet connection, making sure I can connect to Dropbox, Google Drive, and whatever platforms needed to serve clients.
Mhm.
So those are the kinds of things to think about. I know that was kind of a quick rundown, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
Financial, emotional, and being crazy together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that we're kind of painting with this very broad stroke because there's so many different scenarios and so many different situations that flutists can find themselves in, right? So we're just telling you from the perspective of being a married couple, and this June 2024 will have been married a total of 16 years. So in 16 years, we have seen it all from dating and going to school and helping each other across country, all the way to helping each other with terminal degrees, certifications, starting up businesses, studios, and moving around different parts of the states and moving also abroad and back home. So I know that we're covering a lot of ground, but we don't want you to get lost in the mix. And we're trying to really pull out themes that you can apply to your own path. And so I love how Eric broke down the support element. There's a lot of layers to this. Emotional support. Oh my gosh, we could talk about that for an entire episode in of itself. Because what I see my 360ers going through right now is, oh, they have a gap year between undergrad and master's, or there's a gap year of them pivoting from a terminal degree into starting up their own flute studio. And during those pivotal seasons, it can be really emotionally draining. It's emotionally exhausting. And I see it on my people's faces all the time because they don't know what school, like, there's always that waiting period. Like, oh, I put out my applications to these 10 schools and I don't know which school I'm going to go to. And it's hard to make those plans because one school can be in Boston, the other can be in, abroad internationally in France or California. And not having all the details and having all of your ducks in a row, it's difficult to make plans for job transfers or to make plans per your budget, etc. And so emotionally, you're going through a roller coaster of emotions. One minute you may feel really high, one minute you may feel really low, and that's okay. That's perfectly normal. So when you, Eric, have seen me go through these different life changes as I've been creating my own unique flute path, emotionally, how have you been able to come alongside me and support me in a way where I can feel supported? How do you do that as my husband?
First of all, I know where you wanted to be in life. I know the kind of path that you wanted as far as a career. And I guess just as your husband, I just wanted to make sure that we can get there. I can help you get there.
Mm.
First and foremost, I mean, I want what's best for you, first and foremost. So that's why I never say no to you about anything that you want to do. I never say no. I'm always like, okay, we'll figure it out. There's never I can't. Or I learned quite earlier on, you can't say, because it becomes reality if you are a negative person. We can't afford that. Once you start saying that, that becomes your reality. So you have to think positive all the time. So I would just be like, we'll figure it out. We will find a way to figure it out. I've never heard my grandfather say I can't. When he needed something, he just said, we'll figure it out. It puts a layer of hope in there, and then you do figure it out. And that's kind of my take on it emotionally. That's how I support you. It was, I never say no to you, and I wanted the best for you. So how do we figure out how to do that?
Oh, I love that. Thanks, hon. Yeah, and I do feel that's why the theme, this is totally ad lib, guys. Like, we don't have anything written down and we're speaking from the heart. And I need you to know that because I went in having semi of an idea how this conversation was going to go down, but I'm speaking from my heart. And the first word that came to my mind to the forefront was support. I feel so supported by Eric, and emotionally, just how he said, I'm listening to you. Like, what I hear is, I'm listening to you, Heidi. I know where you're going. I know where you're headed. And as a team, what can we do together to make that goal and those aspirations a reality? And even just this piece that you're saying here too, Eric, of positive thinking. You are what you think. Just like the doctor says, you are what you eat. It's the same true for your mental health as well. You are what you think. And that's something, honestly, that you've, air quote, trains me in that capacity. I, by nature, just the way I was raised, I have seen a lot of negative thinkers. And being with you, and I'm not perfect, I'm still working on this, but you have helped transform the way I think and to have more of a positive outlook on life. Because you even say, and this is probably true, we're both believers, but this is, I think, very, very true, and it stems from your Navajo roots. Like, you even encourage me to say the words you say out loud, they create life. They are now a living entity. So careful what you say, careful what you think. And I have you to thank for that. Like, I'm still a work in progress, but I'm coming along a lot better than I was 16 years ago. That's a long time to be molded, and I'm still being molded in that capacity.
Right. But I mean, I think that's the biggest part is positive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Positively thinking through how is it possible to make something happen. And me as your supporter, as your significant other, I had to just put my needs second to yours because you were pursuing a terminal degree and I have a bachelor's degree. So to me, I I I didn't like school as much. It's not to say I hate school. I didn't like school as much. But for you, you wanted to go further. And I've always heard family members always praise those who had a higher level of education. And to me, that was kind of ingrained in me. So then I guess it was easier for me to be like, yes, let's go ahead and do that. So I put your needs before mine. And that's kind of how I thought all the time too, because I told your mom when I wanted to marry you that I was going to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
I had to tell her like, yeah, well, her needs will be before mine.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, even though I did that, a lot of good came out of it was like a leap of faith because when we left Fort Worth to go move to Lubbock, there was no prospects for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was I had to figure out how to build something to, I guess, start finding work remotely in order to pay for an apartment, pay for food, and that happened. So being selfless pushed us into a really great situation too. So I took that leap of faith financially to leave a corporate job, and then all of a sudden you're jumping into like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big leap of faith. Of course, there was a lot of prayers that went along with that, but it opened up doors to where we are right now. If I never did that, if I was fearful of that leap and said, no, I'd just rather work for somebody and be a W-2 worker, not that there's anything wrong with that, we wouldn't have that adventurous life that we had once you graduated. We went abroad. We had lots of plans to continue traveling, but the pandemic brought us home really quick. So I guess being selfless too, and that blessed us in a way to where we created a business around that.
I'm glad you brought that up because let's go back to, this is just one example, But going from having that corporate job that Eric just painted in 2015 and saying, okay, we're moving from Fort Worth, Texas to Lubbock, Texas. Eric was saying, like, I didn't have prospects. I didn't have a job lined up. But okay, let's try. Let's go for it. Let's go get that DMA. And actually just hearing what you just said, that was the foundation to then everything else from 2015 all the way up to the current day. If we did not step out with that leap of faith from the get-go in 2015, none of this, none of the 4 businesses, not building the house, not going abroad, none of this would be here without that first step towards that goal, because it encouraged and it lovingly forced both you and me to get really creative in the Lubbock space. We had applied to all of these church musician, live engineer jobs for Eric. Nothing was taking. The doors weren't opening. And so Eric goes, okay, I'm going to have to step outside my comfort zone and knock on other recording engineers' doors. I'm going to take them out to lunch. I'm going to start putting my stuff up through Upwork. I'm going to create a network of podcasting clients. And whenever I feel like I'm in a frenzy where Flute 360 and my studio isn't quite where I want it to be, God always reminds me, yeah, okay, this is one business, but you have a portfolio of businesses. And I sometimes get stuck in my head like, oh my gosh, the DMA did not pan out the way I wanted it to. It's not giving me, in this particular season, the funds that I want to see. But he always lovingly reminds me, yes, but because you stepped out in faith with your husband to obey, hey, go and get that DMA that was put on our hearts, everything else unfolded because you were obedient to that calling. And it's really cool. It gives me goosebumps. It's like, oh my gosh, like it can be scary at first. And if you are in that situation, I completely empathize, because moving to a whole different city and not having work lined up, that almost sounds bonkers. It almost sounds backwards, right?
It does, yeah.
It forced us to get really creative in the space we were in and to start building offerings and start bringing clients in ASAP, because those church doors and the conventional doors were not opening in terms of work.
Putting a pin in that, I think that was where you lit the fire under yourself.
Yep.
And said, I have to make this work.
Yep.
There's no negative thinking about anything. You're just like, this has got to work. And I think when you put yourself in those shoes of positivity, you can do a lot with it. You think very creatively.
Thinking outside the box.
Yes, you all of a sudden don't think about just one location, because we're like, oh, we're moving to Lubbock. But I never thought that Lubbock was the place I was going to work. I always thought, oh, I could build clientele all over the world.
Yep.
So I had clients from everywhere, across the nation and on the other side of the world. I was working with people. I had weird hours. I was working odd hours, sometimes waking up extra early and working extra late to get things done. But that was the fire that was lit under us to make things happen. And that's going back to positivity. I needed to be positive. And of course, all this talk here is about financially. How do you do this financially? Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing. Everybody needs to eat. The first thing we think about is, what are we going to eat in a day and where are we going to sleep? Those are the 2 biggest things a human being will ever think about from day to day. Mm-hmm. What are we going to eat and where are we going to sleep? And the reality is, everybody needs to work. Everybody needs financial assistance or help in some sort of way. And when you light that fire and you're positive, you can make some stuff happen.
Oh, yeah. It's either sink or swim.
Right.
It's like, but I want to swim. So how can we swim without drowning and killing ourselves in the process?
Right.
But yeah, emotional support. So if your emotions are going all over the place, I loved what Eric said about unselfish. love. Did I say that right? Selfless.
I said selfless, but yes, the same difference.
Yeah. So putting the needs of your partner before your own. And I thank you for that. And by you doing that for me, I love being able to reciprocate that towards you. So like case in point, when we left Masters in 2009 in Louisiana to go to Texas for the first time, we had a hunch that there was a studio availability for me to come and teach in the ISDs in the Fort Worth area. And we're like, well, if it pans out, great. If it doesn't, c'est la vie. But we can get Eric's audio engineering certification through Pro Tools in Carrollton, Texas, because that's something that he's been longing to do for a really long time.
Yeah.
So I get to put your needs also before mine as well. Right. And I love doing that. And it's this trade-off and it's this interplay of partnership. And that's what true partnership is hearing each other's needs, supporting each other's needs, both emotionally, physically, financially. And by doing that, you're able to conquer more together. 2 is better than 1.
Right.
So if you do have a significant other or a partner, ask yourself today, how can I selflessly put his or her needs before mine? And that's going to be given back to you. What you reap is what you sow.
Right.
And so being able to say, here, Eric, here's your certification, go for it. It's easy for me to say, here's the credit card, swipe it. And when you see those funds being taken out, whether it's you renting out a U-Haul truck, buying a digital course, investing in an online program, taking flute lessons, and you see that the money you're investing into yourself, you're going to show up differently because of that investment.
Right.
You're going to show up and go, oh my gosh, I just put $5,000 for that Pro Tools certification on a Visa. Time to show up and kick some booty.
Right.
And you're the only one who actually graduated from that program with a certificate in hand.
Right.
So the whole point is that's an example of a lot of different things, like reciprocating that support from one person to the other. And then by you swiping the card and saying, okay, I'm going to show up. I've invested in myself. I have invested in my future. Then like what you were saying earlier, Eric, is that's putting the fire under your butt to get things done. And it can be scary, but the more you do it, to me, it's exhilarating. It's like, oh, what are the possibilities?
Yeah. I will say, decide to make that jump and you are 100% in. I come from a hardworking background. Like there's no shame in me pushing carts at Target or stocking grocery at a grocery store all night long. I've always known that if push come to shove, I could do something that I didn't really like doing.
Yeah.
But I had to have that. I had that in me to fall back on. I mean, I did road construction. I built highways with people. I did it at 18 years old. Of course, probably don't want to do that anymore at my age. And I did those kind of things. And so I knew that I have a hardworking work ethic as well. There's not any shame in having to do that if that's what you have to make some stuff happen. If that's your skill set to go work for somebody, work hard, work late nights, that's part of the gig. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
For the first 6 years of our marriage, Heidi and I never slept in the same bed.
Yeah.
Well, not at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I was working overnight at a grocery store.
We flip-flopped.
Yeah.
He would do like 10 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning, and I would do 6 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And we did that for 7 years straight.
And I was falling asleep on you because my schedule was different. I was falling asleep on you.
On your one day off on Saturday.
On the 1 or 2 days off that I had on a weekend. Yeah, I was like falling asleep early. But I mean, if you have that in you, do it.
Yeah.
It's good for you.
Yeah.
It'll make, and then Heidi said this to me once, you're not wanting it hard enough. That's why you're not changing. There were some times I was too afraid to knock on doors. And she would say, you don't want it enough yet. One day you will. And that one day came along or I had to make these decisions to make that jump. But if you have that in you to work hard, to work late nights, to make your dream happen, sometimes that's just what you have to do.
And I love what you said. It's a good reminder for all of us. Like, here we're talking about this financial support, getting really creative in these different spaces of how can I make money? And I loved what you said about there is no shame in bringing in revenue and income in different capacities outside of your music making as you're building out your dream. I mean, I was working through mom's best friend agency, babysitting and cat and dog sitting, running all around DFW and doing these little $30 gigs here, $50 gigs here, and working with screaming babies. Did I like it? Heck no. But I did it in order to have our dreams become a reality. And TJ Maxx, oh my gosh, remember TJ Maxx with driving in, 110-degree Texas summer heat without an AC unit in your car? It was horrible. I was driving with like ice packs down my back. And I don't know if it was probably a mixture of like the ice pack melting and me sweating at the same time. But I would have to bring a change of clothes to TJ Maxx and change because I would be drenched in those 30 minutes for the commute.
Right.
You get her done. You find ways. And that is what's so exciting talking to you guys as musicians. We are creative artists in the practice room and on stage. And when we record our repertoire, you guys get super creative with tone colors and articulation styles and, your interpretation. Use that same set of skills and get really creative in the financial space of building out your music studio, your gig schedule, your remote classes, etc. There's no shame in also being a babysitter or a dog sitter on the side as you are trying to get into graduate school.
Right.
And you'll actually, if you do it that way, you may actually build even more confidence, and that will just be a testament of how bad you really want it. So when you do get it, when you do get to grab a hold of the next rung on the ladder, you're going to be that much more proud of your success because you know that you've had to do all sorts of things to get there. What were you going to say? I'm sorry. You got super excited.
I forget.
That's okay. So we talked about emotional support, financial support, and then also just having this open-ended way of communicating with one another. I think communication is key. When you have a plan in place and when you guys can talk openly and freely with one another and hearing each other's ideas and setting plans, that can really help the transition from one season to the next. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. You have to communicate about it all the time, especially if you're going to relocate. Mm-hmm. If your husband or wife has a great job and you are going to pursue that degree no matter what, you have to communicate that. Mm-hmm. Hopefully either side wants it just as bad as you want it for yourself and to give that to them too. So I don't know how to teach that part. It's just something that's innate in you. You have to want it for them too. You have to want your spouse to be successful. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I felt about it too. I wanted you to be successful. So I was like, yeah, I'm willing to do anything. Mm-hmm. So that's not to say that it was scary. It was scary.
Yeah.
But I had to buckle down and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And, as you're communicating these ideas and plans with one another, say you try Avenue A, Avenue B, and say that doesn't pan out. Well, then you get to come together as this duo force and say, okay, let's get creative. What would C look like? What would D look like? If there's a will, there's a way. So whether you are communicating these different plans out with your significant other, or you are emotionally and physically and financially supporting one another, there is always a possibility. There are so many possibilities for you to get creative to reach your goals in the time frame that you see fit for you and your household. And I think this is a really cool conversation too, because it sheds a light onto the non-flutist, to your significant other, because we talk a lot about your creative path, right? How are you going to get from A to B? And if you are doing it solo, great, awesome. But if you're doing it with a significant other or your partner, this is shedding some light onto them and the heap and the thoughts and the emotions that they are going through too. And learning how to come together and lovingly encourage one another again towards these mutual goals, so that way you can push the boulder longer and further together rather than it being solo. If you can come together and if you guys are on the same page, you can go very far, and it's going to be like water and water. It's just going to flow beautifully. But if there's no harmony, if there's disharmony between the two in the couple, and it feels more like oil and water, then that can wreak havoc. So between emotionally and financially supporting your person and listening to them, these are all some nuggets that we can offer you that we have done throughout our transitional seasons towards our musicals. So is there anything, as we wrap up this topic, Eric, is there anything that we left out that you want to bring to the listener's attention, or something that I didn't really cover that you would like to cover?
I guess talking through it. I mean, what if you have that significant other who is the high earner in the relationship, and it's just difficult for them to move? Like, it would be career suicide to leave their job for you to live elsewhere and pursue your education or your career too. What do you do then?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I got to say there's sacrifices that have to be made.
Mm-hmm.
If you want that for the other person, I guess you would have to say a prayer and grit your teeth and see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how I felt when that was our situation.
With China.
Yeah. I mean, we were willing to live apart for a short time. We kind of planned it out and talked it through to see what was going to happen. And then when we first moved to Lubbock too, I mean, I had a great job. You had a great job too.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought that up, because there were seasons when I said, okay, we're moving here now. And you picked up, relocated, and found new work.
Yeah.
But there was also other seasons where we were willing, it wasn't going to be easy, but we were willing to live apart.
Yep.
So again, it comes back to this idea, guys, that you have so many different options and what works best for you and your partner, because there's not one right way to do this. You can skin this cat in a million different ways.
Yeah.
It's going to get messy and they're going to scream, but it's possible. So like when I got that job offer in China, you and I were saying like it would really be career suicide for you to move to China with me, because they had regulations and parameters around internet usage.
Right.
And if you didn't have access to the internet, then your remote work, everything we built up with your clientele through podcasting and music production, would have gone away.
It would have been difficult. It probably wouldn't have gone away. It would have probably been difficult to navigate through it and figure it out, how to work through it smoothly. So we decided that I would stay behind and you would go abroad and work and get your experience that you needed. We mapped it out very quickly and started working on it, but the pandemic happened.
And then I couldn't move.
And then you couldn't move.
Yeah.
So, but for that short period of time, we were okay with it.
Yeah. I mean, it was about a good 3-4 months we had to start wrapping my head around, I'm going to live apart, and I'm willing to live away from my husband for 2 years at a time.
Right.
Depending on how long the contract was going to be renewed.
Yeah. And we were okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't happen, which was great anyway.
Yeah.
But then a lot of great came out of that too, because then that's when you kind of drew the line of like, I'm actually going to build my business.
Yep.
That defined the businesses that we were building right at that moment too. Mm-hmm. So it was another blessing in disguise that happened when we drew that line in the sand and say, okay, from here on, this is what this is going to be. the mentality of your career had totally changed to being a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when you looked at yourself 100% differently too.
Yep.
And then now here we are. We have Red House Productions, JK Productions, Flute 360, and the Pivoting Musician. But
There's always a silver lining.
again, we went ahead and moved forward with the idea. It didn't go through, but another thing happened where, yes, it was another reality had come about for us.
Mm-hmm. So I guess in both different scenarios, you really have to take, and you guys hear me say this all the time, take 10 steps back, really get a lay of the land, see your situation from this bird's eye view. Step back and objectively look at everything for what it is and make out a pros and cons list and bring that to your partner and have him or her bring their list to you as well and start crossing things off. What would work? What wouldn't work? What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? How can we get creative here and jump off the page? And what are we not seeing? What is maybe not black and white? What's maybe in this gray zone that we can compromise and work together to make this happen? So whether you are moving with your person or you're staying behind, can you do a long distance relationship? And with that China scenario, at that point, I think we were married for about 12 years, give or take. So we felt like being married for 12 years, we were in a really healthy, good spot for us to know ourselves as individuals and to understand each other as a partnership, that we would healthily be able to move forward with living apart because we knew each other that well.
Right.
It wasn't like we were newlyweds and we hadn't laid out a foundation for our relationship yet. We had been married for 10, 12 years. So I think you and I felt okay with being apart for some time because of that backbone.
Right.
So again, like there's so many different variations to everybody's story.
And that story, I don't think anybody really knows that was a consideration.
Nobody, actually, that's the first time I've said that out loud.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
It was scary for me.
Yeah.
But then your family was right down the road.
Yeah.
So I felt like, oh, okay, Catherine lives right down the road. Yeah, your mom lives right down the road. Like literally they're like 2 minutes away. So I wasn't going to be lonely. But I guess if you have to make those kinds of decisions, consider all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And like Heidi was saying, weigh them out, make a list, and see what will work. This is just me. This is just how I approach life. I always go to God with these kind of heavy-handed things. I go there first before I put staples in it,
Mm-hmm.
and sign a dotted line.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be, in my life, that's how I approached everything. If you have something like that, go with that. Does it help? Make those kinds of moves. Let that be one of the things that help you make these decisions in your life. And that's really it.
Oh, 1000%. I mean, it terrified me to be away from you for 2 years. The thought of it brought me to tears. So we won't get into that. That's a whole nother story for another day. But I'm glad that these two different scenarios came up, like Heidi and Eric moving together for degrees and jobs. Heidi and Eric being willing to be apart because of a job. There are so many different, I sound like a broken record, but truly there are so many different variations to everybody's story and the dynamic of the partnership. Every relationship is going to have a different feel, energy, and dynamic too. So you kind of have to weigh all of these things out. But I 1000% agree with Eric, and that is our North Star, our compass is God. And because life is heavy, life is really messy. And to have that rock and to have that foundation where Eric and I can step on that rock together gives us a lot of peace, because the waves will be slapping the side of the rock and boats are crashing into the side of the rock. Life can get really, really insane. And to have a resting place is really peaceful for us. So thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm so glad that you tuned in. I hope that this conversation has brought you some hope and encouragement for your own flute path. And I want you to know that these are the topics that I discuss with my Flute 360ers. Whether in a group lesson, a private lesson, or the accelerator program, this is real life stuff. This is what we are unpacking in the masterminds and the master classes on a weekly basis. So we would love it if you were a part of our Flute 360 family. You can go to our free private group through Facebook called Flute 360 Family. It is at no cost to you to join. You can come in and mingle and be a part of our community. But if you want to dive in even deeper and start seeing your transition happen on all fronts of your flute career, playing, your personal growth, your career growth, I personally invite you to the Flute 360 Accelerator Program. Our next session is Saturday, May 25th, 2024, from 11 a.m. Central Time to 1 p.m. Central Time. And the link to join is in the show notes below. Let me know if you have any questions, and until next time. Thank you for listening to the Flute 360 podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review through your favorite podcast app, such as Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, among others. Thanks. Let's talk about flute.